So, morning. Welcome from a chilly Joburg this morning. Very fresh this morning, but I think, Lee, what's in a name? What's in your name? What's in my name? That's what we're talking about this morning, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe we'll kick off with you. So let's hear what's in the name of Lee Harrison.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It's a it's a good topic, tells a story, and I have a couple of stories about my name and names. So the first is that I'm the oldest. As I think I've said, I'm the oldest of 5 children, but really grew up with three sisters. So there were 4 girls. My brother was born when I was 18. So he was born a month before I left home. So I haven't ever really lived with him or grown up with him. And so there were 2 names that my mom and dad decided for me. I was either going to be Michelle Lee or Lee Michelle. And when I was born, my dad looked at me and said, "She looks like a Lee." So whatever a Lee looks like, that's me. And Lee means, it's an old English word meaning meadow or clearing in the wood. And so I love that. I actually love the idea of there's something calm and well, there's something very peaceful, I think, about a meadow. And so I like that. But a meadow is also something that has growth. So this, I'm glad about that for my name. Michelle means who is like God. So it's a question. Who is like God? And has French origins, of course. And again, I think it plays into my love of questions. So that's me, Lee Michelle. And then I had another name growing up. And it stemmed from my mom, 4 children under the age of 7, running a dressmaking business. So, busy, sitting down at lunchtime. Kids have just got back from school and she's decided she's going to have a break. And she says, "Somebody please make me some coffee." Or my dad gets home from work and he'll say, "Oh, somebody please get my slippers." Or "Somebody please get my beer from the fridge," or something like that. So it was always somebody. And somebody would always make the coffee and somebody would always get until that became the family joke. I was somebody. And so it wasn't even a case of now saying Lee or somebody into the air. It would looking at me and saying somebody. And I'm afraid that it actually developed a huge, so now I have this great, wonderful, overdeveloped sense of responsibility to do everything and anything for anybody, which has its downfall. But on the other hand, I am a yes person and I do get things done. So maybe it was good grounding for my life. So that's me and my names. But I would love to hear. It's always a fascinating story. Names are really important. So would love to hear the meanings of your names and if you've got any other names that you've been given.
Great, thanks, somebody. So we have to work out who's going to be next. So it's "Hey you." So we've got somebody, and I'm going to find a "Hey you." So let's see. So Edward, let's get across to you next.
Yeah, I like that, somebody. That's a really good one, isn't it? Of course, what's in a name is a line from Shakespeare. There's a famous line in Romeo and Juliet: "What's in a name, arose by any other name will smell as sweet." But I do think names influence things. my name, Edward, I don't think particularly means anything. I hope you can hear me because it says my internet's not very good. But I'm named after one of my mother's brothers who died of TB when he was a teenager. And it's quite a popular name in my family. I've got 2 cousins called Edward as well. But it doesn't really mean anything. And I attach no meaning to it. My surname, Chapman, means, it comes from the Middle Ages, and it means a hawker, a traveller selling goods, which perhaps explains why have such a wanderlust. And it's actually mentioned in a famous poem by Ravi Burns, Tam O'Shanter. In the first line, he talks about Chapman. So it's all about being a salesman. But when I was growing up and when I was a teenager, I didn't know anyone called Chapman, and I didn't know anyone famous called Chapman. There were no scientists, no politicians, no musicians. And I kind of thought, well, it's not a name that anyone does anything with. And I think that influenced me a bit. Of course, now we've got Tracy Chapman's about the only Chapman I can think of that's well known. My name for me is nothing, I suppose. And I've got a couple of other names that people call me. Well, ones that I know they call me. They might call me other things. And they've both been turned into initials. And the first one, I went to a friend's wedding at Cambridge, and she had her wedding reception in the hall of her college at university. And it was a very big spread, very fancy spread, white tablecloths, silver service, crystal glass, really fancy nameplates with ornate writing on the nameplates. And it said Professor this and Doctor that and Lady so-and-so. My nameplate just had the initials IHE. And it came from an event 2 or 3 years beforehand when I was helping some ladies train to become the first ladies team to finish the London at Brighton road race. And during one particularly tough training session, I was like popping up with water over the places. I heard them running across this field, chanting and clapping. And as they got closer, this friend of mine, who was the one that got married, she was leading the chant. It was, if you all hate Edward, clap your hands. And they're all clapping their hands. And then I became known as IHE, I hate Edward. And that has lived with me ever since. And I love it because it's a term of endearment used amongst a group of friends, and we all went through a big struggle together. And it's just wonderful that it reminds us of that bond we have. And I just love that name. The other one, Mr. TT, I'll go into another time. But I think, yeah, names you're given, like the somebody, have much more importance than the ones you're born with and christened with or whatever. And I just love my little name, IHE. And the fact it was so proudly displayed on a table at a wedding. So that's me finished.
Great, thanks, Ed. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? How some nicknames become positive and others can become very negative. So yeah, very, very interesting. Right, yes, but let's get across to you next.
Hi there. I was still doing research on my name when you called me there. So I saw that there's depending on from which angle you approach it, different meanings for the name Jasper, but it's a family name that dates back many, many decades, hundreds of years in our family line. So my grandfather that I actually never knew, he was Jasper, and his grandfather was Jasper. So the Jasper Johannes Klute seems to be quite a family name that runs through the history, and there's plenty of us. If you go in the look for in the telephone directory or anyone for a Jasper Klute, there's quite many of us. But I didn't know it because When I grew up, I felt very embarrassed. Why couldn't I just be called Jan or Koos or something like that? Because this Jasper stood out, and it was, and people didn't pronounce it right, so it was Casper, Rasper, whatever. Anyway, so the tradition was you gave your eldest son the name Jasper. So I'm the eldest, and so my father was the youngest of his tribe, but I became the Jasper Klute in the family. Then as things move on, and as I grew up and I became more spiritually inclined, and I started to also understand and appreciate the value of a name, I started to read in the Bible how often it refers to Jasper, and I was proud to be in the Bible, but also a bit scared because I didn't feel myself any worthy of being mentioned in the Bible. Then I saw it referred to a stone, so it's a reddish stone, and it was used in the breastplate of the high priest, and it was, and also in Revelation, it refers to the foundation stone. So there will be many foundation stones, but it's one of the foundation stones. And then I see Ivan posted there, but I was also, let me just quickly see what it says there. It says, depending on whether you just look for it as a name or where it fits in the Bible, I left the Bible one out, but it says it's known as the supreme nurturer. It sustains and supports through times of stress and brings tranquility and wholeness. It provides protection and absorbs negative energy. Balances yin and yang. And another place says it's a masculine given name commonly believed to have Persian origin, meaning treasurer. So it can mean a whole lot of things. And I think when Masters mentioned yesterday the what are you and who are you, the what can change, but the who are probably somehow put into the genes. Now I don't know if you absorb the name and elements of that name, because it so happened that I like working with money, and it ends up a lot that I'm involved somewhere with aspects of money in the business. So the treasurer seems to be true, and I would say that in teams and organizations, I tend to be that balance in the team that can work with the extremes and maybe help people move forward and somehow absorb that extremes. And then I think the foundation, I do see myself, or I not see myself, I find myself always involved in trying to find out, but what is the root cause of things, and focuses on the roots or the foundations of things, so that once that's in place, trusting that the rest of stuff will be in place. So yeah, so that's that's my meaning of Jasper.
Thanks, thanks, Jasper. Right, Mpumelelo, we know what it translates to, but what does it mean?
It's just the names in my ID are Mpumelelo, Kevin, Mtembu, and you spelled Kevin exactly as you spelled Kevin's Bestford name. So I won't explain that. I won't explain the Kevin part so that I don't take the thunder from him. But Mpumelelo does mean success. It was given to me by my mother. Kevin was given to me by my father. I think he had met some white guy that he enjoyed their company, and they were called Kevin. Kevin does have a meaning from two different, should I call European clans? But yeah, Mpumelelo was given to me by my mother. I always find that interesting because I was the first one of her children that she gave quite a positive name. My sisters before me didn't necessarily have positive names. In actual fact, the sister I come after, her name means those who are sad. So I asked her that, how is it that when it came to me, she gave me a positive name. And when my mother had me, she wasn't a Christian yet. When she had my brother, she wasn't a Christian. When she had my younger sister, she was. So my sister has a very Christian name, Busisiwe, which means blessing. So, you know, her explanation is that for some reason, she felt that of the children that she had had so far, I am the one who's going to do great and who's going to do well. And she wasn't sure where that was coming from, but she had a very positive inclination towards me. Funny enough, when she gave birth to me, she had a horrible experience at the hospital. The nurse actually, slapped her because she was wailing or crying too much and so forth. And she promised herself that she'll never, ever, ever go back to a public school. So she worked hard to have my brother in a private, sorry, not school, hospital, in a private hospital. So it does mean success. And I think the reason why I like the name is it's a positive and warm name all around, not just in its meaning, but also in its sound. It's a very warm sounding name. I'll put that aside. My grandfather, because we spoke about also names that might have stuck that were not so great. My grandfather insisted that he will give me a name that he will use. And he was the only one who would use that name. The only difficulty was that the name translated horribly in Zulu. So originally we are not Zulu. Originally we are Mozambican. But I am the 4th generation in South Africa. When my great-grandparents came to South Africa, they changed their surnames from Tembe, which was a royal tribe in Mozambique, to Mthembu, and so that they could be South Africans and gain a South African ID. So he called me Mbemi, which in his language meant a strong man. But when you become Zulu, Mbemi means a smoker. So it's a completely horrible translation to what he intended. So that name, he's the only one who used it. And when he was gone, we made sure it fell off completely. So yeah, that's me.
Isn't it interesting how different languages and dialects can translate the same thing into something completely different? I think it makes it interesting. And I know a few big manufacturers have run into those problems when they've named their products and found out that it means something completely horrible in somebody else's language. So you've got to be really, really careful with that one. Right, Cecile, let's come across to you next. You're muted, Cecile. We're not hearing.
Okay. Hi. So just what I said yesterday, my name means blind. My sister's name means heavenly. But my mom, since she was young, she always said 2 things. When she wants twins, when she has kids, and she's going to call them Leon and Dion. She thought she was going to have twin boys. And then as it was, she met my dad, and my dad's name was Gideon. So so we were not boys, so we were girls, and so they called us Celeste and Cecile. Now, the interesting thing is, in the last 60, 50 years, often someone would meet me and I would introduce myself. Hi, my name is Cecile. And we would, let's say at the chamber meeting. And 15 minutes later or half an hour later, someone would come up to me and say, Celeste, I want you to do this, that, and the other. Then I would say, excuse me, what did you just call me? And they would say, Celeste. I say, no, but I'll show you who Celeste is. And then I have a photo on my phone and I show them a picture of the twins together. And I say that my twin sister's name is Celeste. Then they, no, it can't be. But that happens to her as well. Someone calling her Cecile without knowing that she has a twin sister. So that is very eerie, but it happens probably once a month, happens to me and to her as well. Then the next thing is when we grew up, when we were in standard 6, we started doing German. And we spoke German to our athletics coach and our German teacher, and we started calling each other Schwester. And that changed to Swiss, and all our friends call us Swiss. And when my youngest brother is 8 years younger, when he was about 4, we discovered that he calls us Swiss, but he doesn't know the difference between us. He just calls both of us Swiss. He doesn't know which one is which one, so he just calls us Swiss. So, and I think at school, a lot of people didn't know the difference between us either, so they either called us Tweeling or they called us Swiss. And then, so that's about our names. And then when my daughter was born, Lee, I also decided I'm going to look at her and decide what she looks like, or the child that was born, because for both my children, I didn't know what sex they were going to be. I didn't want to know. I wanted to find out during the birth process what sex they are going to be. So when Cindy was born, she just looked like a light person to me, so I called her Cindy. But then when I was pregnant the second time, I so wanted a boy. So I said, if I am going to have a boy, I'm going to call him Reuben, which means behold a son. So luckily he was a boy, so he was called Reuben. But in that family, he was my ex-husband. He was the 5th generation of Andries, Pieter, or whatever. So I decided I'm going to call my son Reuben. So I called him Reuben Andre, and his surname is Venter. That stuck because during his whole, also Ed on initials, because during his whole school career, his initials are R-A-V. All his friends call him Ravi, Ravi. So it's now he's 35 now, and all his friends call him Ravi, which is funny. Now, other names that I'm being called is, I don't mind it when my friends, as a term of endearment, call me, some of them call me Ses, and my husband calls me Silly. But I hate it when people call me Cecilia. I don't know why, but I hate it when people call me Cecilia. But yeah, otherwise I answer to Celeste, Cecile, Cindy. Yeah, people call me Cindy, Twin, Tweeling, and Swiss. So those are all my name stories.
Now I'm really confused. I haven't got a clue what to call you. So. Right, Kevin, let's get across to you next.
Okay. Morning, everyone. I managed to look up my name on the RO Train Google. Bit of a mixture, a bit cosmopolitan. My first name actually means handsome. You can see that word, but that's where it comes from, an Irish origin, and it's actually the patron saint of Dublin in Ireland. So that's my Irish bit. Then I've got a middle name of Leslie, which I never use.
Your sound is breaking up a bit.
I must have said my speaker's not working well, but I'll persevere. So I've got a middle name of Leslie, which I don't use, I don't like. Apparently that's Scottish origin, from a Leslie clan, and meaning Holly Garden. That's Gaelic. And then the surname originates from Anglo-Saxon Beresford in Staffordshire, which is odd, because I always get called Beresford. Everybody defaults my surname to Beresford for some reason, and I'm always correcting them on that. And that means bear. Everyone originates from bear. So I'm a bit of a handsome bear from a holly garden. Yeah. So the names I've been called in the past, from my school days, like my dad before me, we were always called Bessie as a derivation from the surname, right through school days. And then in working life in recent years at an office, I've picked up the name of Rooster. Started as Kevin, Keveroo, and that became Rooster. So yeah, so a bit of a variety there. But the only slightly famous name of Besford, as you Ed brought up the famous connotation. There is a Besford that wrote, I don't know if many of you will be aware of these in South Africa, where a children's character called Wombles, and Pat Besford wrote the Wombles books. Ed will be aware of the Wombles. So that's the only famous connection at all with my surname. But say quite a mixture.
Great, thanks, Kevin. And believe it or not, we back in the bad old days, we used to have a restaurant in Salisbury, which was the capital of Rhodesia before it became Zimbabwe, called Womble's. And in fact, in later years, they actually moved to South Africa, and they're now in Parktown here in South Africa, in Johannesburg. So we they specialized in oversized meals, believe it or not. So it was
the Wombles over here, the character Wombles over here, were little furry creatures that specialize in picking up litter off Wimbledon Common.
I know that. But it was interesting, and that's how I first got to know about Wombles, through the restaurant, and then actually realized there was a story behind it as well. But as I say, a story for another time. I'll tell you about. Right, Caroline, let's get across to you next.
Hi. Yeah, so in our culture, English culture, I don't know, anyway, the English culture I grew up in, people didn't really attach a great deal of meaning to names. It was more you called your children names that you liked the sound of, or had good associations, I suppose. So I must admit that I never looked up the meaning of my name until this whole thing came up. I looked it up yesterday. So anyway, it comes from Charles or Charlemagne, and in German it means free woman, which I quite like because I'm quite independent. I'm a bit of a feminist. So yeah, I think that's quite a nice meaning. From the Spanish, it means caro, means beloved, which is also a very, very nice meaning, obviously. I think it's probably more commonly on Google, it seems to be the free woman one, though. My second name is Jane. I haven't even actually looked that up. I don't particularly like it. It's quite a boring name. So yeah, I didn't think of looking that up. In terms of other names that I've been called, so my surname growing up was Gosnell, which I quite like because it's fairly original, and I was called Gozzy all through school, which was a nice name. I didn't mind that at all. And then in terms of a name that had a negative connotation, for 4 years I was a teacher, and I came into my classroom one day and saw a picture of Bugs Bunny drawn on the board, and that's because my front teeth stick out a bit. So that was a name that I didn't know the children called me, and yeah, I can't say I'm particularly flattered at all, and it's kind of, yeah, anyway, what can you do? So that's me.
Thanks, Caroline. Right, let's get across to the superhero of the group. So, the Dark Knight, we heard about him yesterday, but I don't know if he wants to take it any further. So, Donovan.
Yes, morning, everyone. Yeah, I actually changed my profile name to Donovan BK, Donovan Black Knight. Yeah, I'm going to have to get used to it and really try to live out the meaning of my name, you know, fighting bad things out there. And yeah, hopefully I'll conquer. Yeah, and also I had a nickname which I didn't like, Dad actually gave me that name. I'm not sure of the exact root of it. I believe it's got a Sotho origin. Tut, it means student or pupil. Yeah, I love studying, I love reading, I love learning. So I'm also loving that part out of my name. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Donovan. All right, across to Trevor. Trevor, you with us? Yeah, there we go.
My name means fast.
Very, very fast.
Fast asleep, yeah. So listen, I brought this card out yesterday. Look, my full names, Trevor Kirkness Nell. I wrote them down just so that I could remember them for Mpumelelo, just to get them there. And they came to me, I think on the day that I was born, Mpumelelo. This is going to be a long story, okay? And we haven't got much time. No, so Trevor, well, let me tell you, Kirkness is a church at a headland. and Nell is from a Viking derivation, but the Nell family came 60 kilometers out of Paris. That's so we can trace our family back to 60 kilometers out of Paris. But we seem to have Viking origin. Then Trevor, which started this thing yesterday that I showed you the card, my mother used to love going over to the UK. And so she brought back a card that said, Trevor, he may seem staid and unadventurous, but he has an unpredictable streak. What are you laughing at, Lee? Let me repeat that. He may seem staid and unadventurous, but he has an unpredictable streak and likes to surprise those around him. I don't agree with any of that. A complex and deceptive character who swings between orthodox and outrageous. I mean, this is outrageous. Okay, a complex and deceptive character who swings between orthodox and outrageous. Let me just check. You know, it does say Trevor. Originating from Wales, where there are many places called trefoil. This term derives from the two elements tref, meaning settlement, and for, meaning large. So that was from there. And then I thought you might enjoy, if you don't mind, has everyone had a turn here? I thought I'd share with you a predictive indicator, and this is really for Steve Carter, so he's going to have to listen to it. And I got this in 2005. A guy who was bringing these predictive indicators out to South Africa said he needed to have a comparative test as to whether this works or not. I think he was stringing me a line, but he said, please just come on board. It was quite a serious test, and he sent me the results. So let me see if I can share a screen for you. Can I share a screen? There seems to be one there, and I'll share this quickly. That was the predictive text indicator. Ed, you can read it clearly. So I'll move along to the next page, which is down there. And I'll just read that quickly so that you can get an idea of who this guy Trevor is. Trevor is a confident, independent self-starter with competitive drive, initiative, a sense of urgency, and the ability to make decisions and take responsibility for them. He can react and adjust quickly to changing conditions and come up with practical ideas for dealing with them. His drive is purposeful, directed at getting things done quickly. He responds positively and actively to challenge and pressure, and he has confidence in his ability to handle problems and people. He is an outgoing, poised person, a lively and enthusiastic communicator, tending to be a little more authoritative than persuasive in his style. A lot of rubbish from these things. Trevor talks briskly with assurance and conviction and is a stimulating influence on others while being firm, direct, and self-assured in dealing with them. His work pace is distinctly faster than average. He is able to learn quickly, Ivan, and thoroughly, and can quickly recognize and adjust to change. On the other hand, okay, we'll skip all of those. You want me to skip or continue? He will become impatient and restless, working repetitively with routine details, will delegate such routines if his position permits, and will follow up to assure completion. With an interest in other people and their development, Trevor will delegate authority, limiting such delegation to people in whom he has very high levels of confidence and following up with pressure for timely results. Competitive and sure of himself, Trevor sets high standards of achievement for himself and others and is more concerned with the accomplishment of goals than he is with the details of how things get done. Trevor is stimulated by variety in his work and responsibilities, less interested in work which is routine, repetitive, or highly structured. He is ambitious both for himself and for the business which employs him. Now, I know none of you will agree with this. I've been trying to explain myself for years to many people, but I found this deep inside a box that I was clearing out over lockdown. But what I want to share with you is that my mother, and Mpumalelo, you will love this. At age 26, I was about to get married and I'd built a house, and there's a huge story behind it. At age 26, I think I was into my 4th life, and my mother gifted me with a poster at that time. And that poster, she said this to her, encapsulated who her son was. So when I'm in a sober mood, I'll worry, work, and think. When I'm in a drunken mood, I gamble, play, and drink. And when my moods are over and my time has come to pass, I hope they bury me upside down so the world may kiss my... Well, you know, so I don't know who's right. The original family that I got my name from, that predictive text indicator, or my mother who thought she knew her son. I think all of them are wrong somewhere, but I'll leave it up to you to comment.
Yeah, and for those of you who didn't believe in the power of words, there you have conclusive proof. A sheet of paper can change the course of a life. So, right. So, yeah, I think just from my side, very briefly, after all of that, it's a very difficult act to follow, that one. But yeah, so my surname was actually changed by my grandfather probably 80 years ago, because nobody in South Africa could spell it properly. So yeah, believe it or not, Anderson actually is spelt with 2 S's and an E. So Andersen, S-S-E-N. Funny enough, Trevor also of Norwegian origin. So yeah, you've got two Vikings on the group here, believe it or not. So my great grandfather, I can't remember which one, is a few generations back, was the last of the line of Andersons to captain his own ship out of Norway, and I was very disappointed when I found out that he had gone and sold his ship to a rival shipping group out of the Norway called the Christiansens, and settled down in Jagersfontein in South Africa to try and mine for diamonds, and lost his entire fortune in the process. So yeah, very annoyed with that. I would far rather have had a ship on the ocean than a useless diamond mine in the Vrystaat. So we didn't do well in those ventures. So we should have stayed on the water. Yeah, and my first names, which are Ivan and Mackenzie, come from my maternal line. My grandfather was Ivan Mackenzie Campbell Roger, so a good South African name, as you can see. And they also came to South Africa a good few generations back. And in fact, I had an uncle who was a missionary whose name was Ivan Mackenzie. His surname was Mackenzie, and they actually books on him from the 1800s and his missionary work in South Africa. So that is where those names came from. And just in terms of meanings, I've also never really looked up the meanings of my names. So it was quite interesting. So Ivan is actually a Slavic or a Russian name, and it means God is gracious, believe it or not. So yeah, that was quite a revelation when I looked up that one. I didn't know that. Always thought it was. I knew it was originally Russian, because people always used to call me Ivan the Terrible, which I used to counter with, no, it's Ivan the Great. So you've got to switch these things around. And then Mackenzie, which is a name that's used both for boys and girls, is Scottish, but it means the bright one. So God is gracious and the bright one. I thought, well, you can't go too far wrong with either of those. And then finally. And finally, Anderson, which is derived originally from the Greek Andreas, which means manly, strong, and courageous. So, yeah, God is gracious for the manly, strong, and courageous bright one. So, what more can I say? Take it from there. Right. I think on that note, yeah, Trevor's just fallen off his chair. We'll hand back to Lee and see where we go tomorrow.
Can I say something?
Well, it's good. I think, Cecile, sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, just one thing. my husband's family's got this funny thing. His dad was Dutch, his mom was South African. When she was pregnant with him, she had a Jewish doctor that suggested names for her children. So she called Sven Holger, which is Dutch. Sven is Scandinavian, Holger van Rie. Then 2 years later, she had another son, and the same Jewish doctor suggested names, and that was Igmar. I know he's got a second name, I can't remember what. And then 2 years later, exactly 2 years and 2 days later, his sister was born, and same Jewish doctor recommended another Scandinavian names, and she was called Ilka, and she's also got a second name. So up to today, and she stays mum about why did she call her children the names that the Jewish doctor suggested.
Amazing.
We won't go down that route. Thank you. It's been really good fun just hearing and exploring those names. And Trevor talking about, this, who are you really? And I think that's a question, and it came up for me. Over the weekend, I got stuck into, I was working, but I had in the background Ed Stafford, the British explorer on Discovery Channel. And he introduced himself in one of the episodes. He started by saying, "What makes me come alive is going into the unknown." And he explained that a little bit. And then he said, "What frustrates me is the fact that people think that the world is completely known and that there are not unexplored places still to go." And that combination of what makes me come alive and what frustrates me is what has created his entire drive to do what he does and what he loves, his passion, his career, his everything, his focus, his energy, and his life. It revolves around what makes me come alive and what frustrates me. And so I wondered whether that would be something that we could share tomorrow, is what makes you come alive and what frustrates you, and how do those things combine to make you do that drives you to do what you do. And I don't mean it has to be in your career, but the thing that actually gives your life purpose and meaning and direction. So let's talk about that tomorrow.
Great, thanks Lee. Thanks everyone. Interesting morning, and have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Go well. Cheers.